Every character, location, or experience you've read about in my crime fiction novels holds a piece of reality. I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to the story behind my stories, the video podcast where crime fiction meets my authentic experience. Here, we delve into the real-life inspirations and intimate stories that shaped my novels. Discover how my everyday encounters, adventures, and travels translate into tales as gripping as they are genuine. The story behind my stories goes behind the words on the page to reveal the backstory that inspires my writing. Hit follow or subscribe and ensure you're part of this journey.
Good morning. Welcome to episode 5 of the story behind Don't Die For Me, Argentina. So last week we talked about Fudge and Sparky, and this week we're going to talk about that first ride. So we headed on out, and I was nervous. I was really nervous. I was worried about how I was going to get on with Fudge and how well my riding skills from so long ago was going to carry me through on this journey. And everybody else seemed so competent. And I think I needed to get that first ride under my belt. Now, I used a lot of how I felt in the book with Penny, but the tension not being so much about her riding ability, but the people she was riding with, because that's what the book was about. That's where the thriller bit comes from. It's nothing to do with her riding ability. I touch on it, so she's got that other tension, but it was more my tension that I used to do that. And it was sort of quite a harsh breaking in, if you like, because there was something that happened on that first ride that I think made all of us just suddenly be, okay, this is the Wild West, not the Wild West, but like that. And as with these things, the group is all mixed talents, mixed abilities. There were some amazing riders there. I had one lady who was a polo player, and she had fallen off and broken her back and was back on a horse. I think she mentioned that she'd been told that she wouldn't walk again, let alone ride. But you would never have known, except when we went swimming. She was in a bikini and you could see the scar on her back. But then we had others that were in the middle of travelling, and I just kept fairly quiet about how extensively I'd travelled. But yeah, you could definitely see the characters. I would say the majority of them were a lot more competent and confident than me, and potentially James too. But a lot of that in this situation, and same as it was in tie-dye, is our age. Both me and James are in our late 50s, and everybody else was in their 20s and 30s. Even the people that ran the ranch, maximum, the oldest was around 40. So we were definitely on the older side. And I think that, that wore on our minds too, purely sleeping under the stars. with very little comfort, that was going to be tricky at our age as well. But on the other side of that fear and trepidation for both me and James, it was just sheer excitement too, because we really were making a childhood dream come true, even if it would have been easier to do when we were younger. So we headed out and we were going in a big loop just close to the farmhouse. And it must have been late afternoon. And we were out for an hour and a half, I think. But I will read you the book that is that ride. They all rode on, lots of cameras, photo taking of the amazing landscape, the sun dropping in the sky, and each of each other on their newfound steeds, excited to be going on an adventure. The farm dogs lolloped along in a line to keep up with the horses, but even when they stopped to regroup, take some instructions, or open a gate, the main dog, black and white, named Betsy, was still running around like a mad thing, chasing rabbits. She tore off after a rabbit that had mistakenly dashed from scrub to grass tuft right in front of her. I should explain that the grass tufts aren't like the tufts we have, where you've just got a little bit of grass in one location. These grass tufts, I don't know how to describe them. They were probably this size, a sort of a football, rugby ball size, up and across. Just a root ball of grass, really, and with some grass over the top. So, plenty big enough to hide a rabbit, and plenty big enough to cause a problem when you're riding, because you have to go round them. You can't sort of jump on them, but small enough that Betsy could run round them. A streak of muscle and instinct as she raced, swerved and cut corners, predicting the rabbit's path and colliding, jaw open, then clamped down around the rabbit's neck as it squealed. Only a single shake to snap its neck, and then silence. Quick, efficient, nothing sentimental about it. Andreas didn't so much as blink. He was already out of the saddle, boots hitting the ground before the dust settled. He gave Betsy a curt pat, lifted the rabbit and tied it to his saddle with the same ease he'd tied down a bedroll. They all watched, not horrified exactly, but unsettled in that quiet way people are when they realise they're far from home. Somewhere else it might have seemed savage. Out here on the Patagonian range, it was just another piece of the day. After an hour and a half in the saddle, in a big loop around, they headed back to the ranch house for their last night. Last night sleeping in a bed. Last night using a shower and a toilet. Last night enclosed from the stars and the sky. As the sun set behind them as they trotted back into the yard, one of them knew already that not all of them would return. Obviously that last line is not what I did. That is me, adding the tension and the thriller to it. Because this isn't about hunting and a rabbit, that's quite toned down from the actual experience we had. Particularly the sound of the rabbit squealing, and none of us said anything, none of us spoke about it. And maybe it was only me, but it was almost like that moment, that point that we switched from being out on a leisurely ride, having fun, to we are actually here for a job. We are actually, this is the way a lot of them live. This is the way of life. You know, even in suburban Surrey, we don't have to live off the land in the same way that you do out there, out in, with nobody able to access you. You can't carry everything with you, so you have to kill your food. And that was a moment. And then obviously it's not planned, because they don't know that there's going to be a rabbit that comes that Betsy's going to catch and kill. But it was a switch. In my experience, it was just sort of switching on to, now we just do things a different way. We're here for a job. In others' minds, I don't know. But in Penny's mind, it's just that creeping little bit of something else going on. But yes, he did take the rabbit back with us. And when we got back to the ranch house, we talked about what he would do with it. And I can't remember if it was the right way around, but at that point it had already been skinned and was ready for cooking. But we untacked all the horses and we put them all away, and then we were all going to have showers, meat for dinner, and they'd put all these nibbles out. So I'm going to read you a second extract for today and then expand on it afterwards. After the group returned to the yard, they tied their horses to the classic poles and rails Penny remembered from the westerns she'd watched as a kid. They removed the saddle covers, the saddles, the thick blankets beneath, stacking everything neatly for the morning. Bridles came off, lead ropes unclipped from head collars, and one by one the horses were sent back out into the field beside the farmhouse. The chatter was lively, full of the thrill from the afternoon's ride, raw nature, and the tantalising glimpse of what the next 6 nights would bring. Anticipation buzzed through the group. Dreams long held were finally becoming real. Everyone headed to their rooms, taking their saddlebags to pack for the days ahead after a last shower. Penny had been paired with an eek. Penny was over the moon with Fudge. He was the sweetest, kindest gelding. She'd loved his stride, his pace, the way he listened. None of these horses were like the riding school ponies back in England, numb-sided, hard-mouthed, and resigned to follow the same route day in, day out. These were real working horses, each with their own quirks and personalities. From what she'd seen already, this trip would be tough for anyone who wasn't a competent rider. Penny just hoped the few refresher rides she'd squeezed in before coming to Argentina would be enough. Her bigger worry was how her seat in the inner thighs would hold up. She already felt like she was walking like John Wayne. And for anyone that doesn't know, John Wayne was a cowboy. He starred in all the major westerns. She and Danique laughed as they tried to choose what to pack, realising quickly they couldn't take everything. Luxuries would stay at the farmhouse, only the essentials, a minimal change of clothes, a little wash kit, and a handful of personal items. She also packed a power bank to charge her normal phone, as did Anik and a few others. They wouldn't have signal, but the cameras would be invaluable for capturing the week ahead. Two things I want to pick up there. Yes, we were very much. It was a cattle drive. We found when we got there that we would be riding for sort of 3 days out to the far point, and this is where we were riding to sleep under the stars and live there, whatever. And then we would start riding back, and as we came back, that's when we would pick up the cattle and drive them closer to home for that season. And in a little way, I was disappointed because I was here for cattle drive. I wanted to drive the cattle, but at that point, I was more glad that it would just be me and Fudge. We'd just be riding, and I wasn't going to have to be riding hard and twisting and turning and dashing around driving cattle at first. I wanted a little bit more time to get used to it. But as I said, I think from the first episode, it was the sleeping under the stars, being in the saddle all day. So, but I mentioned in there Penny, with it being a while since she'd ridden. But you've got to remember that Penny, it had only been sort of 10 years. For me, it had been 30. So I used that, but not as hard for Penny because she wasn't my age. She didn't have to worry about that like I did. So let me continue. Oh, and the thing with the cameras, yes. Although we had no signal, we were never going to be able to make a phone call or use our phones for checking WhatsApp or social media or anything like that. You know, we were totally off grid, and we had no electricity or way of charging anything. And you would think, but you don't need it because you can't use it. But obviously, our phones nowadays are cameras too, and that's the perfect way of capturing the time. We were very lucky on our trip. Two guys joined late on, and they were a professional photographers sort of film crew to capture our trip to use as a promotional video for Morado Ranch. And so a lot of the photos that I've used in my social media campaigns and this promoting this, what are personal videos, personal photos, or ones that each other took. I have some even more incredible and amazing ones that were taken by these two guys who were never just a film crew from the outside. They were riding with us, doing everything with us. They were two of the gang too. Although Penny was still a little more reserved than the others, she was excited. Everyone seemed to have gelled well so far, She had no doubt that by the end of the week tempers might fray and personalities might clash. But right now, everyone was making an effort, eager to make friends and make this a great experience. With both bathrooms occupied and her shower next in line, Penny wandered down the corridor to the large open family area. Some people were already showered, hair damp, clothes fresh, drinks in hand. Others were still in riding gear, warming themselves by the fire with a beer or a glass of Malbec. Snacks were laid out on the table, tiny fish, pieces of rabbit in a rustic stew-like sauce, bread and a South American-style dip. People drifted in and out until finally everyone was gathered, wine or beer in hand, chatting excitedly about the adventure ahead. So that rabbit was what Martine told us the rabbit Betsy had caught out on our ride would end up, but not yet because it had to be hung, it had to be stewed and everything else. So we weren't eating the rabbit we caught today, but somebody else would be. The food was brilliant throughout the whole thing. Dinner was served, trout for the fish eaters, chicken escallop for those who weren't, with vegetables and salads. The food was fresh, authentic, full of flavour. They all suspected this might be the last proper meal for a while. Cooking on the open range wouldn't be like this, but for now it was pure enjoyment, good food, good company, and the thrill of what was to come. So, it was obviously in the book there has to be dodgy things going on, and things that a character might say or do that makes you question. That's the nature of a thriller writing. But for me, obviously, I can do that. I can, as I always do, take the real life situation, twist it, expand it, see it from another angle, and but I can honestly say the whole group had really clicked, and there was so much banter and laughter going on, and then the three people that ran the ranch and the two guys doing all the filming, we all just became this big group. Obviously not all of us with a shared dream, because two of them were there to do a job with the filming and photography, and three of them were there to run the ride, and then Steen, who was the guide from Who's Around the World, she was there to do a job too. So there wasn't, we weren't all there for a shared dream, but you wouldn't have known. And everybody just gelled. And there was one point on the trip where I did ask Steen, you know, are we the best group that had enjoyed each other's company? And, you know, what happens when you're out here in the middle of nowhere and somebody is a complete tosser, or there's a major blow up between people, and how do you all then live so closely, so reliant on each other, and somebody doesn't fit, causes trouble, whatever. And you have to remember, I wasn't asking that then to put in a book, because I hadn't picked back up my writing career at that point. So that's the thing about all of the story behind my stories and all the books that I write. The experiences I write about are all obviously based on my own experience and my own life, but they all happened before I saw it through the eyes of a writer or an author, which I think just makes them more authentic. So it's not like I go on a trip and, oh, I remember that. Oh, I could use that in a book. Oh, let me describe this now so I've got it for later. This all comes from my memory, and it comes from the genuine experience that I'm having, not its potential use in a book. So that was just pure interest, and maybe the universe has had my writing head on without me even knowing that's what I was ever going to be, so that I would ask the right questions. But the response maybe wasn't one that you would expect, that they had never had that. Everybody had always got on. And there's a whole other book and a whole other story about a trip I went to India. A similar thing, bunch of people all doing the same thing together. But whilst that was an activity that most people do, I do believe that the horse world, riders are a different species. Not out there or anything, but just that if you love horses and you love riding and the raw reality of horses and stable life. I think Ginny Cooper wrote a whole set of books around that. I feel like the people that do that are more real. And that's not to diss anybody else, and I haven't done it for years and years and years, but there is a raw naturalness about horsey people. And I think that, and the fact that we were all there for this shared dream, just made us all together rather than separate. And that was maybe why there was never any animosity, never any arguments, never any of that sort of side of things on any of their trips. Unlike Penny's trip in the book, that was a whole different kettle of fish. And we will continue talking about that and my experience next week. So thank you so much to everybody who has bought, read on Kindle Unlimited the book. It's now coming up to 2 weeks out, and I love the reactions, and this is a good one. This is a really good one. So if you haven't and you like crime fiction, pop over and buy it. If you don't, and this memoir style stuff is more your thing, then on the 20th of June, the first podcast has been expanded with diary notes, pictures, and the other side of my time in Thailand. And the story behind tie-dye is out then in book form. So have a great week, and I will catch you again next week.